Have you ever given your whole heart to someone, quietly, without asking for anything back, hoping they'd just see you, appreciate you, love you a little louder? Let me tell you about Emily. She's 32, pregnant with her first child, and sitting in a modest kitchen in Denver while the rain taps softly against the window. But what's really making noise? Her heartbeat. Fast, anxious, and heavy with the truth. Because behind her husband's growing business, those 3 tech repair shops that everyone thinks he built on his own, is her. Her late night, his future. And now? He walks in, barely says a word, and starts scrolling on his iPad like she's just wallpaper. No thank you, no how are you feeling today, just tension in his jaw, short breaths, and a phone that won't stop buzzing. You ever get that feeling in your gut that something's off, but your heart's not ready to fact? Yeah, Emily. So here's hang tight, free. And if something about this already feels familiar, if you've ever felt invisible in your own relationship, then maybe the story is for you too. Trust me. Her hand rested protectively over her rounded belly, 28 weeks of carrying Logan's child, while her other hand scrolled through spreadsheets. On her laptop, the numbers told a story of success. Logan's chain of tech repair shops had grown from a single storefront to 3 locations across Colorado, each one a testament to the late nights she'd spent balancing books, the dreams she'd helped him sketch on diner napkins, the sacrifices she'd made without question. Emily, have you seen my iPad? Logan's voice carried from the living room, tinged with that familiar edge of impatience that had grown sharper over the past few months. It's charging on the counter. She called back, not looking up from her work. The baby shifted inside her, and she smiled softly, imagining tiny feet pressing against her ribs. Logan appeared in the doorway. His expensive suit was wrinkled from a long day at the shop. At 36, he still carried himself with the confidence of a man who believed his own success story, though lately, that confidence felt more like arrogance to Emily. His dark hair was perfectly styled. His watch gleamed, all the markers of a man who had arrived, yet something in his eyes seemed perpetually restless. He grabbed the iPad without acknowledgement, his fingers already swiping across the screen. Emily noticed the way his jaw tensed, the slight flush that crept up his neck. "Everything okay?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. "Just work stuff," he muttered, but his thumb was moving too quickly. His breathing too shallow, need to check some messages. Emily's instincts, honed by years of reading between the lines of his moods, whispered warnings she didn't want to hear. She saved her work and closed the laptop, the gentle clicking sound seeming to echo in the suddenly tense kitchen. Logan's phone buzzed on the counter, then buzzed again and again. "Your phone," Emily said quietly. He looked up from the iPad, his eyes darting between her face and the insistent device. For a moment, something flickered across his features. Guilt, maybe, or fear, but it was gone so quickly that Emily wondered if she'd imagined it. "I'll get it later," he said, but his voice cracked slightly on the last word. The iPad in his hands chimed with a notification, and Emily watched as his face went completely white. His fingers fumbled, clearly trying to silence something, but it was too late. Another chime, then another. "Logan." Her voice was steady, but her heart was hammering. "What's wrong?" He held the iPad against his chest, protective and guilty. "Nothing's wrong. Why would something be wrong?" The baby kicked hard, as if sensing her mother's rising anxiety. Emily's hand moved instinctively to the spot, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing, but now it felt like armor, protection for the innocent life inside her against whatever truth was about to shatter their world. "You're acting strange," she said, standing slowly. At 28 weeks pregnant, everything required more effort, but her movements were deliberate, controlled. "And those messages, are they work messages?" "Emily, not everything is about you." The words hit like a slap, sharp and unexpected. In 8 years of marriage, Logan had never spoken to her with such casual cruelty. Emily felt something shift inside her, something that had nothing to do with the baby. "Let me see," she said quietly. "What, the iPad? Let me see it." Logan's laugh was forced, hollow. "You don't trust me now, after everything I built for us?" "Built for us?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "I've been doing the books for 3 years, Logan. I know exactly what we've built, together." He took a step back, still clutching the iPad. Another notification chimed. And this time, Emily caught a glimpse of the screen before he could hide it. The name Brooke glowed at the top of a message thread, followed by a preview that made her blood freeze. "Can't wait to see you tonight. I'm wearing that." The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. Emily's vision seemed to narrow, focusing only on Logan's face as understanding crashed over her in waves. The late meetings, the new clothes, the way he'd stopped touching her belly when he kissed her goodbye, the way he'd stopped kissing her goodbye at all. "Emily," he started, but she was already moving. Her hand shot out faster than her pregnant body should have allowed, grasping the iPad before he could react. Their eyes met for one terrible moment, his wide with panic, hers blazing with a fury she'd never felt before. Then she looked down at the screen. The messages were all there, weeks of them, photos she never wanted to see, promises that belonged to her, plans for a future that was supposed to include the child she carried. "Emily, I can explain." But as she scrolled through message after message, watching her marriage disintegrate in real time, Emily realized something profound. She wasn't surprised. Somewhere deep inside, she'd known. Her body had known. Her heart had been preparing for this moment for months. She looked up at Logan, really looked, and saw a stranger wearing her husband's face. What would you do if you discovered your husband's betrayal while carrying his child? Would you confront him immediately? Or would you stay silent and plan your next move carefully? Emily's world had just shattered in an instant, but something told us she was stronger than Logan ever imagined. "What do you think she'll do next?" Emily's hands didn't shake as she scrolled through the messages. That surprised her more than anything. The steadiness of her fingers as they revealed the careful construction of her husband's double life. Each swipe brought new evidence. Restaurant reservations at places they'd never been together, hotel confirmations, intimate photos that made her stomach clench with more than just pregnancy discomfort. "Emily, please." Logan's voice sounded small now, deflated. She didn't look up. She couldn't. If she met his eyes, she might lose the strange calm that had settled over her like protective armor. Instead, she continued reading, her voice eerily steady as she spoke. "Brooke Mason, 28 years old. Your new assistant." She paused on a particularly explicit photo, her jaw tightening. "Though I don't think customer service training covers this." "It's not what you think." The laugh that escaped Emily's lips was sharp, humorless. "It's not what I think, Logan. I'm looking at pictures of your assistant in lingerie with the caption, 'For my favorite boss.' What exactly should I be thinking?" The baby kicked hard against her ribs as if responding to the tension radiating through her body. Emily pressed her free hand to the spot, a gesture so instinctive it happened without thought. The simple movement seemed to break something in Logan's composure. "I didn't plan for this to happen," he said, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair. It happened." The question came out flat, factual. Emily had switched into the same mode she used when managing numbers. She used for balancing books, emotions locked away, focused only on gathering information. "Logan, when did it start?" She finally looked up at him, and Logan took an involuntary step backward. There was something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Something that made him realize he'd underestimated the woman who'd spent 8 years supporting his dreams. 3 months ago, he whispered. 3 months. Emily calculated quickly. She'd been 25 weeks pregnant then, just starting to show properly, dealing with morning sickness that lasted all day and the exhaustion that came with growing a human being. She'd been worried about nursery colors, child care options, and how to balance new motherhood with keeping his books straight, while he'd been taking pictures of another woman. "She knows about me," Emily said, scrolling through the messages where Brooke referenced the wife with casual dismissiveness. "She knows about the baby." Logan's silence was answer enough. Emily set the iPad carefully on the kitchen counter. Her movements were deliberate, controlled. When she spoke again, her voice carried a quality that made Logan's skin crawl. Not anger, not hysteria, but something far more dangerous. Complete emotional detachment. "You were planning to leave after the baby was born." It wasn't a question. Emily had always been good at reading between the lines, at seeing patterns where others saw chaos. The messages painted a clear picture. Discussions about Logan's situation, promises about their future together once he handled things at home. Emily, I love you. I love our baby. But Logan's words tumbled over each other, desperate now. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. Emily stood in their kitchen, one hand protectively curved over their child, the other resting on evidence of his betrayal. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face free of makeup, wearing one of his old college t-shirts that now stretched over her belly. She looked nothing like Brooke, with her perfect clothes and calculated poses. You changed, he said finally, the words coming out like a confession. Ever since you got pregnant, everything is about doctor's appointments and baby names and nursery furniture. You don't laugh at my jokes anymore. You fall asleep during movies. You only want to talk about pregnancy stuff. Emily absorbed this quietly, her expression unreadable. I changed because I'm growing your child, Logan. My body is creating a human being. I'm tired because your son is using my energy to develop his brain and his lungs and his heart. I know that. But you needed to feel alive again. Emily's voice held no inflection, no judgment. She was simply stating facts. And Brooke makes you feel alive. Yes, the admission seemed to deflate him completely. She laughs at everything. I say something, and she thinks I'm fascinating. She makes me feel like the man I was before everything got so complicated. Emily nodded slowly, as if Logan had just explained a complex business problem rather than destroyed their marriage. The strange calm hadn't left her. If anything, it was deepening, crystallizing into something that felt like clarity. Before I got complicated, you mean? Logan's mouth opened, then closed. He'd walked into a trap of his own making, and they both knew it. I didn't mean it that way. Yes, you did. Emily picked up the iPad again, not to look at more messages, but to study her husband's face reflected in the dark screen. You meant it exactly that way. I became complicated when I became pregnant with your child, when I started planning for our family instead of just supporting your ambitions. Emily, does she know that I balanced your books when you couldn't afford an accountant? That I worked 60-hour weeks so you could quit your job and start your business? That I haven't bought myself new clothes in 2 years because every dollar went into your company? Each question landed like a physical blow, but Emily's voice remained steady, almost conversational. Does she know I reorganized our entire life around your schedule, your goals, your dreams? That I postponed my career, my plans, everything I wanted, because I believed in what we were building together? Logan couldn't meet her eyes anymore. Emily stepped closer, close enough that he had to look at her belly, at the obvious proof of their shared future. But most importantly, Logan, does she know you're about to lose everything? Emily's words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that hadn't quite started burning yet. Logan's face went pale, then flushed, then pale again as the implications of her statement sank in. What do you mean, lose everything? His voice cracked on the last word. Emily moved to the kitchen sink, her movements slow and deliberate. She filled a glass with water and drank it methodically, her back turned to him. She braced herself against the counter for a second longer than she needed to, her fingers gripping the edge of the sink until her knuckles turned white. For all her control, a tremor passed through her shoulders, quick but undeniable. She wasn't made of steel. Her mind flashed with images of the nursery she'd just started setting up, the tiny onesies folded in drawers, the rocking chair by the window, the faint scent of lavender from the detergent she'd chosen because it was safe for babies. All of it suddenly felt fragile. She hated that he could still shake her. Hated that she'd let herself be blindsided. But the rage was already sealing over the cracks in her armor. She straightened slowly, and when she turned around, her face was composed once more. When she finally faced him again, her expression was unreadable. I mean exactly what I said. She leaned against the counter, one hand still resting on her belly. You're about to lose everything that matters. Emily, you're scaring me. What are you planning to do? The question struck her as almost funny. What was she planning to do? 20 minutes ago, she'd been worried about nursery themes and maternity leave policies. Now she was standing in the wreckage of her marriage, pregnant and betrayed, while her husband looked at her like she was a stranger. Maybe she was. I'm not planning anything, Logan. I'm just stating facts. Her voice remained eerily calm. You made your choice 3 months ago, and now I'm going to make mine. Emily walked past him toward the staircase, moving with the careful balance that pregnancy required. Each step felt deliberate. Final. Where are you going? Logan followed her, panic creeping into his voice. To pack. Pack. Emily, wait. We can talk about this. We can work through this. Emily paused at the bottom of the stairs, her hand on the banister. Work through this? She turned to look at him, and for a moment, Logan saw something that made his chest tighten. Not anger, not tears, but complete emotional disconnection. You've been planning a future with another woman, while I've been planning a nursery for our child. What exactly is there to work through? In their bedroom, Emily moved with mechanical precision. She pulled her suitcase from the closet and began folding clothes with the same methodical care she once brought to balancing his books. Logan hovered in the doorway, watching her pack maternity clothes and pregnancy vitamins as if she were going on a business trip rather than leaving their marriage. Emily, please just stop for a minute and talk to me. She didn't stop folding. We are talking. No, we're not. You're acting like some kind of robot. Where's the emotion? Where's the fighting? Where are the tears? Emily paused, a soft cotton dress halfway into the suitcase. You want me to cry? I want you to react like a normal person. Normal? She tested the word like it tasted strange. What's normal about discovering your husband's affair while you're carrying his child, Logan? What's the normal response to finding out that the man you've supported for 8 years thinks you've become too complicated because you're pregnant? Logan ran his hands through his hair again, a gesture that had become frantic. I didn't handle this right. I know that. But Emily, I'm still the same man you married. I still love you. Emily continued packing, her movements never hesitating. No, you're not the same man. The man I married wouldn't have risked his family for excitement. The man I married understood that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice you make every day. I can choose you now. I can end things with Brooke. You can end things with Brooke because you got caught. Emily's voice held no bitterness, just cold fact. Not because you realized you were wrong. Not because you missed me. Because you got caught. She moved to the bathroom, gathering her prenatal vitamins, her special pregnancy lotion, the little things that marked this stage of her life. Logan watched helplessly as she erased herself from their shared space. Where will you go? He asked quietly. Asheville, to Grandma Rose's house. Logan's eyes widened. Emily, that place has been empty for 2 years. There's no heat, no. There's electricity and running water. I can make it work. Emily zipped the suitcase closed with finality. I need space to think, Logan, and our baby needs to be born into peace, not chaos. Our baby needs his father. For the first time since discovering the messages, Emily's composure cracked, slightly. Her hand pressed firmly against her belly, protective and fierce. Our baby will have his father in his life, but I won't force our child to grow up in a home where his mother is treated as an inconvenience. She lifted the suitcase, testing its weight. Logan moved forward instinctively. Let me carry that. I can manage, Logan. I can manage. The repetition was firm. Final. I've been managing a lot of things on my own lately. This is just one more. At the front door, Emily paused. The house they'd bought together 3 years ago suddenly felt like a museum of someone else's life. Pictures on the walls showed a couple who looked happy, secure, building something together. That couple felt like strangers now. What about the business? Logan asked desperately. You know the books better than anyone. Tax season's coming up and the quarterly reports. Emily turned slowly, and Logan saw something in her eyes that made him step back. It wasn't anger or hurt. It was something far more unsettling. Complete professional detachment. You'll figure it out, or you'll hire someone. That's what successful businessmen do when they need help, isn't it? Emily, you can't just... I can, Logan. I can do whatever I need to do to protect my child and my sanity. She opened the door and cool evening air rushed in. You made your choice 3 months ago. Now you get to live with it. As she walked to her car, Logan called after her, his voice breaking. What about us? What about our marriage? Emily paused, her hand on the car door. When she looked back at him, standing in the doorway of the house they'd shared, she saw a man who looked smaller, diminished by his own choices. Our marriage ended the first time you told Brooke you loved her, she said quietly. Everything else is just paperwork. The car started on the first try, reliable as always. As Emily pulled out of their driveway, she caught sight of Logan in the rearview mirror. He was still standing in the doorway, looking lost, confused, like a child who'd broken something precious and couldn't understand why it couldn't be fixed. For the first time in 3 hours, Emily allowed herself to feel, not the crushing devastation she'd expected, but something unexpected, relief. The road to Asheville stretched ahead of her, dark but full of possibility. Her phone buzzed with text messages from Logan, but she didn't look at them. Instead, she placed her hand on her belly and spoke softly to the life growing inside her. It's going to be okay, baby. We're going to be okay. And for the first time in months, Emily actually believed it. The drive to Asheville took 2 hours through winding mountain roads that Emily remembered from childhood summers. Each mile put distance between her and the life that had imploded in a single evening. And with each mile, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months, the ability to breathe deeply. Grandma Rose's house sat at the end of a gravel driveway, surrounded by towering oaks that had stood sentinel for decades. In the headlights, the small craftsman-style home looked tired, but sturdy, like an old friend who'd weathered storms and remained standing. Emily had inherited the property 2 years ago, but hadn't had the heart to sell it. Now she understood why. The key was still hidden under the ceramic frog by the front steps, exactly where Grandma Rose had always kept it. Some things, Emily thought as she unlocked the door, remained constant, even when everything else fell apart. The house smelled like lavender and old books, scents that transported Emily instantly to summer afternoons spent learning to bake pies and listening to stories about strong women who'd survived harder times than these. The electricity worked as promised, and the heat kicked on with a grateful hum when she adjusted the thermostat. Her phone had been buzzing constantly during the drive. 17 missed calls from Logan, 12 text messages that she deleted without reading. Emily turned the phone to silent and set it face down on the kitchen counter. Tomorrow she would deal with practical matters. Tonight, she just needed peace. In the main bedroom, Grandma Rose's room, Emily unpacked her single suitcase. The room was simple: a queen bed with a hand-stitched quilt, a dresser topped with family photos, and a rocking chair positioned by the window overlooking the back garden. Emily had always loved this chair as a child, though she'd never imagined she'd one day sit in it while pregnant and alone. She lowered herself carefully into the rocker, her hand finding its familiar resting place on her belly. The baby was active tonight, responding to the day's stress with restless movement that both comforted and worried her. "We made it, little one," she whispered. "We're safe now." The word safe struck her as odd. She'd never felt unsafe in Denver, in the house she'd shared with Logan, but she realized now there were different kinds of safety. Physical safety was one thing, emotional safety was another entirely. For months, she'd been walking on eggshells around Logan's moods, trying to be the perfect wife who didn't ask too many questions or demand too much attention. She'd been shrinking herself to make room for his discontent, and she hadn't even realized it. The next morning brought autumn sunlight streaming through windows that Emily had forgotten existed. The house seemed different in daylight. Not just a refuge, but a possibility. She made coffee, decaf, a habit Logan had always rolled his eyes at, and wandered through rooms filled with memories. In the small home office, she found Grandma Rose's old computer desk and realized it would be perfect for setting up her laptop. The internet still worked, and within an hour, Emily had established a makeshift workspace. If she was going to start over, she might as well start smart. Her phone rang just as she was logging into her email. Logan's name flashed on the screen, and for a moment Emily hesitated, then she answered. "Hello." "Emily, thank God, I've been calling all night. Are you okay? Is the baby okay?" Logan's voice sounded rough, like he hadn't slept. Emily felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but it passed quickly. "We're fine." "Emily, please come home. We need to talk about this properly. Brooke doesn't mean anything to me. She was just..." "Logan." Emily's voice cut through his rambling with quiet authority. "I'm not coming home. Not today, not tomorrow. I need you to understand that. But the baby, The baby is exactly where he needs to be, safe, secure, and protected from chaos. There was a long pause. When Logan spoke again, his voice had changed. Taking on the edge of frustration, Emily knew all too well. You can't just disappear, Emily. You can't take my son and hide in the mountains like some kind of hermit. I have rights. You absolutely have rights, Emily agreed calmly. You have the right to be involved in your son's life. You have the right to financial responsibility. You have the right to scheduled visitation once he's born. Scheduled visitation? Emily, I'm his father. Yes, you are. And I'm his mother. And right now his mother needs peace and stability to carry him safely to term. Your actions made that impossible in Denver. Emily could hear Logan breathing heavily on the other end of the line. She recognized the sound. It was the same breathing pattern he used when a deal was going badly, when he was realizing he'd lost control of a situation. What do you want from me? He asked finally. I want you to let me heal. I want you to figure out what you actually want from your life. And I want you to consider whether you're ready to be the kind of father our son deserves. I can be that father. I will be that father. Then prove it, Emily said simply. Stop calling Brooke. Stop the affair. Get counseling. Show me through actions, not words, that you understand what you've done and what it will take to rebuild trust. And if I do all that, will you come home? Emily looked around Grandma Rose's kitchen at the simple beauty of a life built on solid foundations rather than shifting ambitions. I don't know, Logan. I honestly don't know. After ending the call, Emily sat in silence for a long time. Outside, she could hear birds singing and the wind moving through the oak trees. Inside, her baby moved gently, peacefully, as if he, too, appreciated the tranquility. For the first time in months, Emily felt like herself again, not Logan's wife. Not the invisible support system for someone else's dreams, but Emily, a woman strong enough to start over, smart enough to demand better, and brave enough to build a life worth living. She opened her laptop and began typing a business plan. If she was going to be financially independent, she needed more than just bookkeeping skills. She needed her own business, her own clients, her own source of security. Emily Hayes Financial Consulting, she typed, then smiled. It had a nice ring to it. As the morning turned to afternoon, Emily found herself humming while she worked, something she hadn't done in longer than she could remember. The future felt uncertain. Yes, but for the first time in years, it also felt entirely her own. 3 weeks into her new life in Asheville, Emily had established a routine that felt more natural than anything she'd experienced in years. Mornings began with decaf coffee on the back porch, watching the mountains emerge from the mist while her baby stirred gently awake inside her. Afternoons were spent building her consulting business, reaching out to potential clients, and developing financial planning resources specifically for expectant mothers. Women who, like her, needed to prepare for uncertain futures. The work felt meaningful in a way that balancing Logan's books never had. Each client consultation reminded her that she wasn't alone in facing life's unexpected challenges. On a crisp Thursday morning, Emily decided to venture into downtown Asheville for the first time since arriving. She needed office supplies and had been craving the kind of fresh bread that only came from real bakeries. At 31 weeks pregnant, the walk downtown felt good, purposeful, peaceful. The farmers' market was in full swing when she arrived, vendors selling everything from homemade soaps to late-season apples. Emily moved slowly through the stalls, enjoying the unhurried pace and genuine smiles of people who weren't constantly calculating their next business move. She was examining hand-knitted baby blankets at a craft booth when a familiar voice made her freeze. Emily? Emily Hayes? She turned slowly, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. Cole Maddox stood 3 feet away, holding a cup of coffee and looking exactly like she remembered, only better. At 38, he'd grown into the confidence that had always set Logan's teeth on edge. His dark hair was touched with silver at the temples. His green eyes held the same sharp intelligence. She remembered, but there was something softer there, too. Surprise, and what looked like genuine pleasure at seeing her. Cole, she managed. Her voice stayed steady, though her pulse had definitely quickened. What are you doing in Asheville? I could ask you the same question. His gaze dropped briefly to her rounded belly, then returned to her face, with careful respect. I have a satellite office here now. Electric vehicle market's growing fast in the mountains. He paused, clearly taking in her situation. You look well. You look beautiful, Emily. Pregnancy suits you. The compliment was offered simply, without the calculated charm Logan used when he wanted something. Emily felt heat rise in her cheeks. Thank you. I'm staying at my grandmother's house for a while. Rose Hayes's place. I remember her. Cole smiled, warm, genuine. She was a force of nature. Logan must love having access to those mountain roads for test drives. The mention of her husband's name landed like a stone in still water. Emily's expression must have shifted because Cole's face immediately grew concerned. I'm sorry. Did I say something wrong? Emily looked around the busy market, at families and couples enjoying their Saturday morning, and suddenly felt the weight of her isolation. She'd been strong for 3 weeks, independent, focused, but standing here with someone who knew her, really knew her, not just as Logan's wife, she felt unexpectedly fragile. Logan isn't here, she said quietly. We're separated. Cole's expression shifted through several emotions, surprise, concern, and something that looked a lot like anger, on her behalf. Emily, I'm sorry. Are you okay? The simple question, asked with such genuine care, nearly undid her. She pressed her lips together, willing herself not to cry in the middle of the farmer's market. I'm okay, she managed. Better than okay, actually. I'm figuring things out. Cole studied her face with the same focused attention he'd always brought to everything that mattered to him. Have you eaten breakfast? Because there's a cafe around the corner that makes incredible blueberry pancakes, and you look like you could use some company. Emily hesitated. She'd been so careful to maintain her independence, to prove to herself that she could handle everything alone. But the thought of sitting across from someone who saw her as more than just a pregnant woman with problems was incredibly appealing. I'd like that, she said. The cafe was small and warm, with mismatched chairs and the kind of atmosphere that encouraged long conversations. Cole insisted on a table by the window where Emily could sit comfortably. He didn't hover or fuss, just made sure she was settled before taking his own seat. So, he said after they'd ordered, electric vehicles in Asheville? Tell me you're not just trying to steal Logan's customers. Emily nearly choked on her water. Are you? Cole's grin was unrepentant. Maybe a little. But honestly, the market here's different. People care about sustainability, about reducing their environmental impact. It's not just about status symbols. They talked about business, about the mountains, about everything except the obvious questions hanging in the air. Emily found herself relaxing in a way she'd almost forgotten was possible. Cole listened when she spoke, asked thoughtful questions, didn't try to fill every silence with noise. You started your own consulting business, he said when she mentioned her work. It wasn't a question. Cole had always been good at reading between the lines. Financial planning for expectant mothers, women who need to think about their futures in new ways. Emily traced the rim of her coffee cup with one finger. It turns out there's a real market for helping women prepare for independence. Something flickered in Cole's eyes. Understanding, maybe. Or admiration. That's brilliant, Emily. And knowing you, I bet you're already booked solid. Getting there. She smiled, and realized it was the first genuinely happy smile she'd felt in months. It feels good to build something that's entirely mine. I remember how smart you were. Cole said quietly, Logan was lucky to have your brain working on his business, though I always thought you could do more than just balance his books. The compliment should have felt awkward, coming from Logan's former rival. Instead, it felt like recognition, like someone finally seeing her potential, instead of just her usefulness. Logan would say you're biased, Emily said with a small laugh. Logan would be right. I've always thought he underestimated you. Cole's tone was matter of fact, not flirtatious, not inappropriate. Some men can't handle being with women who are their equals, or their superiors. The observation was so accurate, it took Emily's breath away. She'd never thought of it that way, but now she could see the pattern, how Logan had slowly, subtly discouraged her from pursuing her own ambitions, always with reasonable-sounding excuses about timing and priorities. I should probably get going, she said, though she didn't want to. I have client calls this afternoon. Of course. Cole signaled for the check, but Emily reached for her purse. I can pay for my own breakfast. I know you can, Cole said simply, but I asked you to join me, so it's my treat. Consider it a celebration of your new business. As they walked back toward the farmer's market, Emily felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The simple pleasure of male company, without agenda, without expectation, without the exhausting weight of managing someone else's emotions. Emily, Cole said as they reached her car, I hope this doesn't sound presumptuous, but if you ever want to talk about business, about the mountains, about anything, I'm a good listener, and I make excellent coffee. Emily looked at him, standing in the autumn sunlight, hands in his pockets, offering friendship without strings attached. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to have coffee with someone who was genuinely interested in her thoughts, her dreams, her plans. I'd like that, she said, and meant it. As she drove back to Grandma Rose's house, Emily caught herself humming again. But this time, it felt like more than contentment. It felt like the first note of a psalm she was just beginning to compose. 2 weeks after their encounter at the farmer's market, Emily found herself looking forward to Thursday mornings with an anticipation that surprised her. She and Cole had fallen into an easy routine. Coffee at the same cafe, conversations that ranged from business strategies to mountain hiking trails to books they'd both read. It wasn't dating. Emily was clear about that, both to herself and to Cole. She was 33 weeks pregnant, recently separated, and rebuilding her entire life. The last thing she needed was romantic complications. But friendship, the kind of intellectual companionship she'd forgotten existed, that felt like exactly what she needed. Your client base is expanding faster than you anticipated, Cole observed, reviewing the growth charts Emily had shown him on her laptop. They'd moved beyond casual conversation to actual business discussions, and his insights were proving invaluable. Almost too fast, Emily admitted, one hand resting on her belly where the baby was performing what felt like gymnastics. I'm having trouble keeping up with demand, but I can't exactly work 18-hour days anymore. Have you considered bringing in a partner? Cole asked. Someone who shares your vision, but can handle the overflow? Emily paused, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. I hadn't thought about that. I've been so focused on maintaining control, on proving I can do this alone. You can do it alone, Cole said quietly. That's obvious to anyone who's watched you work these past few weeks. But that doesn't mean you have to. The simple statement hit Emily with unexpected force. She'd spent so many years being Logan's silent partner, supporting his vision while subordinating her own, that the idea of choosing her own equal partner felt revolutionary. You're thinking too hard, Cole said with a gentle smile. I can practically see the gears turning. Sorry, I'm still getting used to making decisions based on what I want, rather than what someone else needs. Cole's expression grew serious. Logan really did a number on you, didn't he? Emily looked out the cafe window, watching people walk by with their dogs and shopping bags, living their uncomplicated Thursday morning routines. I don't think he meant to, she said slowly. But yes, I suppose he did. What you're building now, it's impressive, Emily. The way you've identified a real need in the market, developed a service model, built a client base. Most people with MBAs couldn't do what you've done in 6 weeks. The praise felt different coming from Cole than it ever had from Logan. When Logan complimented her work, it always felt tied to how it benefited him. Cole's admiration seemed to exist purely for its own sake. Thank you, she said simply. That means more than you know. Can I ask you something? Cole's tone was carefully casual. Have you heard from Logan recently? Emily's jaw tightened slightly. He calls every few days. Wants to know when I'm coming home, whether I've gotten this out of my system yet. She used air quotes around Logan's exact phrase. He seems to think this is some kind of temporary rebellion. And the other woman, Brooke? Emily's voice was flat. As far as I know, she's still very much in the picture. Logan says it's complicated, but his version of complicated seems to involve her accompanying him to business dinners. Cole's hands tightened around his coffee cup. He's taking her to business functions? According to our mutual friends, yes. Apparently, she's helping him through this difficult time. Jesus, Emily. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's clarifying, actually. Every public appearance he makes with her just confirms that I made the right choice." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the morning bustle outside. Emily found herself studying Cole's profile, the strong jawline, the way he listened with his full attention. The absence of that restless energy that had always made Logan seem like he was waiting for something better to come along. "Can I ask you something now?" Emily said. "Of course. Why aren't you married?" The question slipped out before she could stop herself, and she immediately felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Sorry. That's too personal." Cole laughed, a warm sound that made Emily's embarrassment fade. "It's not too personal, and the answer is probably that I've been too focused on building my business to build a relationship. Plus," he paused, "I have high standards." "High standards? I want what my parents had. 53 years of marriage before Dad passed, and they were still holding hands in restaurants. They were partners in every sense, intellectual equals, best friends, lovers who never stopped seeing each other clearly." Cole's expression grew thoughtful. "Most people settle for less than that. I decided I'd rather be alone than settle." Emily felt something twist in her chest. Not jealousy, exactly, but a profound sadness for what she'd thought she had with Logan, but apparently never did. "That sounds wonderful," she said quietly. "What about you? Was that what you thought you had with Logan?" Emily considered the question seriously. "I thought we were building toward it. I thought the partnership would develop naturally as we grew together. But looking back, I think Logan was always more interested in having a supportive audience than an equal partner." "His loss," Cole said simply. The words were spoken without flirtation or agenda, just a statement of fact that made Emily feel seen in a way she'd forgotten was possible. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Logan's name flashed on the screen, and Emily felt her good mood deflate slightly. "Speak of the devil," she muttered, reading the message. "Need to discuss custody arrangements and financial support. This has gone on long enough." Cole's expression darkened. "He's threatening you?" "Not exactly threatening, just pressuring. He thinks if he makes the practical aspects complicated enough, I'll give up and come home." "Will you?" Emily looked at Cole, then around the cafe where she'd been spending her Thursday mornings, then down at her belly where her son was still performing his daily acrobatics. Everything about this new life felt right in a way her old life never had. "No," she said with quiet certainty, "I won't." "Good." Cole's smile was proud, supportive, "because you deserve better than being someone's consolation prize." As they prepared to leave, Cole hesitated by the door. "Emily, I hope this doesn't overstep, but I have a lawyer friend who specializes in family law. If Logan starts getting aggressive about custody or support, you might want to have someone in your corner. Someone who knows the system." The offer was practical, helpful, and completely without strings attached. Emily felt a rush of gratitude for this man who saw her as capable, but didn't mind offering support when she needed it. "Thank you," she said. "I might take you up on that." "The offer stands whenever you need it." As Emily drove home, she realized something had shifted during their conversation. For the first time since leaving Denver, she wasn't just surviving day by day. She was actually looking forward to tomorrow, to building her business, to raising her son, to the possibility of a future filled with people who saw her clearly and valued her completely. It felt like coming back to life. Emily was reviewing client files on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when her phone exploded with notifications. First Logan's number, then unknown numbers, then Logan again. The insistence felt aggressive, urgent in a way that made her stomach clench with unease. She answered on the sixth call. "Emily, thank God, where the hell have you been?" Logan's voice was sharp with panic and something else, rage, barely held in check. "I've been working. What's wrong?" "What's wrong is that I just got a call from Derek Vaughn saying he saw my pregnant wife having lunch with Cole Maddox at some cozy little restaurant in Asheville. Want to explain that to me?" Emily felt ice settle in her veins. Derek Vaughn was one of Logan's business contacts, a man who trafficked in gossip and social politics. Of course he'd felt compelled to report back. "I don't need to explain anything to you, Logan." "The hell you don't. You're carrying my child, Emily, my child. And you're running around with my biggest competitor while I'm trying to save our marriage." Emily stood slowly, her free hand instinctively protective over her belly. At 35 weeks pregnant, every movement required consideration, but her mind was crystal clear. Save our marriage? Her voice was deadly quiet. Is that what you call parading Brooke around Denver at business functions? Because I've heard about those too. The silence on the other end of the line was telling. That's different, Logan said finally. Brooke is helping me get through this. She understands what I'm going through. And what exactly are you going through, Logan? The hardship of having your pregnant wife discover your affair? Don't be sarcastic with me, Emily. This isn't a joke. Cole Maddox is a snake, and if you think he gives a damn about you or our baby, you're more naive than I thought. The accusation hit harder than Emily expected, not because she believed it, but because it revealed how little Logan understood, how little he understood about respect, about genuine care, about the difference between manipulation and authentic friendship. Cole has been nothing but respectful, she said evenly, which is more than I can say for you. Respectful? Logan's laugh was harsh, bitter. Emily, wake up. The man's been trying to get under my skin for years. What better way than to seduce my wife while she's vulnerable? I'm not vulnerable, Logan. I'm pregnant. There's a difference. You're both. You're pregnant and alone, and probably desperate for male attention. You're an easy target for someone like him. The words landed like physical blows. Emily sank back into Grandma Rose's rocking chair, her breath coming shallow and quick. This was Logan at his worst, the man who emerged when he felt threatened, who could identify weaknesses with surgical precision and exploit them without mercy. Don't you dare, she whispered. Don't you dare try to make me feel pathetic for having a friend. A friend? Jesus, Emily. Listen to yourself. You're 35 weeks pregnant with another man's baby, and you think Cole Maddox wants to be your friend? Yes, Emily said firmly. I do think that, because some men are capable of seeing women as complete human beings, rather than just objects to acquire or discard. Logan was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice had changed. Gone was the panic, replaced by something colder, more calculated. You want to play this game, Emily? Fine. But I'm not going to let you use my son as a pawn in whatever midlife crisis you're having. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm filing for emergency custody. It means I'm going to argue that you're mentally unstable, that you've abandoned your home and your marriage to shack up with my business rival. It means I'm going to prove that you're an unfit mother. The words hit Emily like a physical blow. She gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles went white. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I have documentation of your abandonment, witnesses to your relationship with Cole, and a very good lawyer who thinks I have an excellent case. Emily's mind raced through the implications: emergency custody hearings, court battles, her son potentially taken from her before he was even born. The thought made her feel sick, with terror and rage. Logan, please don't do this. Then come home. End this ridiculous charade. Cut contact with Cole and let's work on our marriage like adults. And Brooke? Another pause. Brooke is not your concern. She's absolutely my concern. If you want me to come home to work on our marriage... One thing at a time, Emily. First, you come home. Then we'll discuss the other issues. Emily closed her eyes, feeling the trap closing around her. This was classic Logan. Create a crisis, offer a solution that required her complete capitulation, then promise vague concessions he had no intention of honoring. I need time to think, she said finally. You have 24 hours. After that, I file the papers. The line went dead. Emily sat in the rocking chair for a long time, listening to rain against the windows and her son moving restlessly inside her. The peace she'd built over the past 2 months felt fragile, suddenly threatened by the storm Logan was determined to unleash. Her phone buzzed with a text from Cole. Hope you're staying dry in this weather. Coffee tomorrow, if you're free. The simple message, sent without knowledge of the crisis she was facing, nearly made her cry. Here was a man offering companionship with no agenda. No demands. No threats. The contrast with Logan couldn't have been starker. She typed back. Rain check. Dealing with some complications. His response came immediately. Anything I can help with? Emily stared at the offer, remembering his mention of a family law attorney. She thought about Logan's threats, about the possibility of losing her son before she'd even held him, about the choice between surrender and fight. Maybe, Can I call you later? Anytime. Emily set the phone aside and placed both hands on her belly, feeling her son's strong movements beneath her palms. Whatever Logan thought he could take from her, he was wrong about one thing. She wasn't the same woman who'd packed a single suitcase and driven away in shocked silence 2 months ago. She was stronger now, smarter, and she had something Logan had never possessed: the unwavering determination of a mother protecting her child. If Logan wanted a war, he was about to discover just how formidable his opponent had become. Emily didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat at Grandma Nora's kitchen table with her laptop, a legal pad, and a determination that burned brighter than fear. If Logan wanted to play legal hardball, she would be ready. But first, she needed help from someone who understood the system. At 6 a.m., she called Cole. "Emily, is everything okay?" His voice was immediately alert, concerned. "Logan is threatening to file for emergency custody. He wants to claim I'm mentally unstable and an unfit mother." The words came out steady, controlled. She'd practiced saying them until they lost their power to make her voice shake. Cole was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a cold anger that Emily had never heard from him before. "He's using your baby as leverage." "Yes. That lawyer I mentioned, Melissa Torres, she's brilliant. And she doesn't lose cases like this. Can you meet with her today?" "Cole? I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering, Emily. What Logan is doing is unconscionable. Let me help." 3 hours later, Emily sat across from Melissa Torres in a downtown Asheville law office that radiated competence and quiet power. Melissa was younger than she'd expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a handshake that conveyed both warmth and steel. "Tell me everything," Melissa said, pulling out a legal pad. "Start from the beginning. Leave nothing out. And don't worry about how it sounds. I've heard worse." Emily talked for 2 hours about the affair, the abandonment during her pregnancy, Logan's public relationship with Brooke, his emotional manipulation, and now his threats. Melissa took notes with the efficiency of someone who'd seen this pattern many times before. "How's your documentation?" Melissa asked finally. "Thorough." Emily opened her laptop and showed files she'd been organizing since leaving Charlotte. Screenshots of all the messages between Logan and Brooke that she could access, photos of them together at business functions. Friends had sent them to her thinking she should know. Financial records showing business expenses for personal trips with Brooke. Medical records documenting her prenatal care and mental health. Melissa smiled, the first genuine smile she'd shown all morning. "You're going to be just fine, Emily. In fact, I think Logan may have just made the biggest mistake of his life." "What do you mean?" "Emergency custody orders require proof of immediate danger to the child. Logan's going to have to convince a judge that a pregnant woman living peacefully in her grandmother's house, building a successful business, and receiving excellent prenatal care somehow poses a threat to her unborn baby." Melissa leaned back in her chair. "What he's actually documenting is his own unfitness, the affair, the emotional abandonment, the use of his child as a weapon." Emily felt something loosen in her chest for the first time in 24 hours. "So you think I can fight this?" "I think you can win this," Melissa said. "But Emily, I need to warn you, it's going to get ugly before it gets better. Logan is going to try to destroy your reputation, your emotional stability, anything he can use as ammunition. Let him try." The words surprised Emily with their force. "I'm not the same woman who discovered those messages 3 months ago. I'm stronger now." "Good, because we're going to need that strength." After the meeting, Emily found Cole waiting in the parking lot, leaning casually against his car with 2 cups of coffee. He straightened as she approached, his eyes scanning her face. "How did it go?" "Better than I hoped." Emily took the coffee gratefully. "Melissa thinks Logan overplayed his hand. She's right, the man's always been better at threats than follow-through." Cole's expression turned serious. "Emily, there's something you should know." Emily's stomach dropped. "What is it?" "Logan called me this morning." Her breath caught. "What did he say?" "A lot of things I won't repeat in front of a pregnant woman. But the gist, if I don't stay away from you, he's going to ruin my business. Make sure everyone in the automotive world believes I'm the kind of guy who preys on vulnerable married women." Emily felt her cheeks burn, equal parts anger and embarrassment. Cole, I'm so sorry. You don't deserve to be dragged into this. Stop. Cole's voice was calm but firm. I'm a grown man, Emily. I can handle Logan's tantrums. The real question is, do you want me to step back? Because I will, if it makes this easier on you. She looked at the man who had shown her nothing but kindness, who had offered support without strings, who was now willing to face Logan's wrath simply because he cared about her well-being. The choice felt enormous. No, she said softly. I don't want you to step back. You're the best thing that's happened to me in months, Cole. I won't let Logan take that away too. Something shifted in Cole's eyes. Maybe relief, maybe gratitude. Then we face this together, he said. As friends. As friends, Emily echoed, though the word felt too small for what was growing between them. That afternoon, Emily's phone rang, Logan's number. She answered, but this time she had Melissa on speakerphone from her office. Time's up, Emily, Logan said without greeting. What's it going to be? I'm not coming home, Logan. Then you've made your choice. I'm filing the papers this afternoon. Actually, Melissa's voice was smooth, calm, and cutting. This is Melissa Torres, Emily's attorney. Before you file anything, Mr. Hayes, you might want to review the evidence my client has compiled regarding your conduct during this marriage. The silence on the line was deafening. Who is this? Logan's voice had lost its edge. I told you, Emily's attorney continued smoothly. I'm calling to inform you that any attempt to file for emergency custody will be met with counterclaims, thoroughly documenting your affair, your emotional abandonment of your pregnant wife, and your use of your unborn child as leverage in what amounts to emotional extortion. You can't prove any of that. Actually, we can. Quite thoroughly. Screenshots, photographs, witness statements, financial records. Shall I continue? Another long pause. When Logan spoke again, his voice was strained. I just want to see my son, Emily. That's all I've ever wanted. Then we'll work out a reasonable custody arrangement, Emily said calmly, after he's born. Through our attorneys. Like civilized adults. And Cole? Emily looked across the room at Cole, who sat quietly, offering steady support without interfering. My friendships are not up for negotiation, Logan. She could hear Logan breathing hard on the other end. This isn't over, Emily. No, she agreed. It's not, but it's also not going to be conducted through threats and manipulation anymore. After ending the call, Emily felt both exhausted and strangely energized. The immediate crisis had passed, but she knew Logan wouldn't back down easily. You did beautifully, Melissa said. Calm, composed, and absolutely unshakable. I had great coaching, Emily replied, glancing gratefully at both her attorney and Cole. That evening, as Emily sat in Grandma Rose's old rocking chair, watching the sun set over the mountains in a wash of golden light, she felt a deep shift inside her. She wasn't just surviving Logan's attacks on her freedom. She was thriving in spite of them. Her phone buzzed with a message from a potential client, a woman in a situation strikingly similar to her own. Emily smiled as she typed back, setting up a consultation. She was building something meaningful, something valuable, something entirely her own. Logan could keep his threats and manipulations. Emily had discovered something far more powerful, the unshakable knowledge of her own worth. At 37 weeks pregnant, Emily felt like she was carrying a small planet. But her mind had never been clearer. She was reviewing final preparations for her baby's arrival when her phone rang from an unfamiliar number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Emily? Thank God you picked up, a young woman's voice, trembling and thick with tears. This is Riley Vaughn. Emily's blood turned to ice. What do you want? I need to see you. Please. It's about Logan, about what he's planning. You're in danger, and so is your baby. Every instinct screamed at Emily to hang up, but something in Riley's voice, genuine terror, made her pause. What are you talking about? I can't say over the phone. Please, Emily, meet me somewhere public. I know you have no reason to trust me, but if you don't, Logan is going to destroy both of us. An hour later, Emily sat in the same cafe where she'd shared so many peaceful mornings with Cole, waiting for the woman who'd helped dismantle her marriage. When Riley walked in, Emily barely recognized her. Gone was the polished, confident woman from Logan's social media posts. This Riley was pale, hollow-eyed, and visibly shaking. Thank you for coming, Riley said, sliding into the opposite chair. I know you must hate me. I don't hate you, Emily said quietly. I hate what you did, but I don't hate you. Riley's eyes filled with tears. You should. I hate myself enough for both of us. What did you want to tell me? Riley pulled out her phone with trembling hands. Logan isn't just filing for custody. Emily, he's planning to have you declared mentally incompetent. He's been building a case that you're having a psychotic break. Emily's vision narrowed. What? Look, Riley said, showing her a series of text messages between Logan and someone named Dr. Barrett. He found a psychiatrist willing to testify that your behavior, leaving your home, starting a business, befriending his competitor, indicates severe postpartum depression and possible psychosis. Emily read the messages, her horror building with every line. Logan had been systematically documenting every decision she'd made since leaving Charlotte, twisting them into evidence of mental instability. Her independence became isolation. Her business success became manic behavior. Her friendship with Cole became evidence of impaired judgment. Why are you showing me this? Emily asked. Because I just realized what kind of man I've been sleeping with. Riley's voice cracked. Emily, he doesn't want you back. He never did. He wants your baby, and he wants to make sure you can never interfere with his life again. And you're just now figuring this out? Riley flinched at the quiet accusation in Emily's tone. I thought he loved me. I thought once you were out of the picture, we'd be together. But last night, I overheard him on the phone with his lawyer, talking about how to minimize child support payments and eliminate your parental rights entirely. Emily felt the baby kick hard against her ribs, as if he too sensed the danger. What else? There's more. Riley scrolled through additional messages. He's been manipulating his business associates, telling them you had a nervous breakdown, that you're unfit to manage finances. He's systematically destroying your professional reputation. The scope of Logan's betrayal was staggering. This wasn't about custody. It wasn't even about marriage. This was full-scale destruction, designed to leave Emily with nothing. No child, no career, no credibility. Why should I trust you? Emily asked. You've been helping him for months. Because I recorded everything from last night. Riley's voice was barely above a whisper. Everything. His real plans, his lies about you, his complete lack of remorse for what he's doing to the mother of his own child. She placed a small recording device on the table between them. This is yours, if you want it. But Emily, there's something else you need to know. I'm pregnant too. The word struck Emily like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the table, struggling to process this final revelation. Logan doesn't know yet, Riley continued. I just found out yesterday, and after hearing him talk about destroying you, about taking your baby, I realized he'd do the same to me if I ever became inconvenient. Emily stared at this young woman, barely older than she'd been when she first met Logan, and saw her own past reflected back. The eager support, the sacrifices for his ambitions, the slow realization that love meant different things to different people. What do you want from me? Emily asked. I want to help you stop him, Riley said, and then I want to disappear before he destroys me too. Emily's phone buzzed with a text from Cole. Everything okay? Saw Logan's car heading toward Asheville. The message sent alarm bells through Emily's system. He's coming here, she said sharply. Riley's face turned pale. He doesn't know I'm here. If he finds out. Come with me, Emily said, making a split-second decision. Now. They exited through the cafe's back door just as Logan's silver Mercedes pulled into the front parking lot. Emily's heart pounded as she helped Riley into her car. Together, they watched Logan storm into the cafe they'd just vacated. He's going to be furious, Riley whispered. Let him be furious, Emily said, her voice hard. We have work to do. 20 minutes later, they were seated in Melissa Torres's office. On the conference table lay the recording device and Riley's phone. Melissa listened to Logan's recorded conversation with her usual professional composure, but Emily could see the fire building in her eyes. This is criminal, Melissa said finally. Conspiracy to commit fraud, perjury, possibly harassment. Mr. Whitmore just handed us enough evidence to not only destroy his custody case, but potentially send him to prison. What about Riley? Emily asked. She needs protection too. Melissa turned her attention to Riley, who sat huddled in her chair, visibly shaken. Are you willing to testify against him? Riley nodded. I have months of messages, photos, evidence of financial impropriety. I know where all the bodies are buried. Then we need to move fast, Melissa said. Emily, go home and pack a bag, not because you're running, but because Logan is about to have a very bad day, and I don't want you anywhere near the fallout. As they left the law office, Riley suddenly grabbed Emily's arm. Why are you helping me? After everything I did to you? Emily looked at the woman who had once been her undoing, and now, unexpectedly, her ally. Because you're having his baby too, and no child deserves Logan Whitmore as their only advocate. Riley's tears came then, months of guilt and fear finally crashing down. I'm so sorry, Emily, for all of it. I know, Emily said simply. But sorry doesn't fix anything. Making sure he can't hurt anyone else, that might. As Emily drove back to Grandma Rose's house, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Complete certainty. Logan had overplayed his hand, revealing his true nature to the one person who could expose him completely. Her phone rang with his number flashing across the screen, but for the first time in their entire relationship, Emily didn't answer. She was done being manipulated. Done being threatened. Done being afraid. Logan Whitmore was about to learn that some women, when pushed too far, don't break, they fight back. 6 weeks later, Emily stood in the nursery she'd created in Grandma Rose's house, holding her son Leo for the first time since bringing him home from the hospital. At 3 weeks old, he was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, Logan's dark hair, paired with her determined chin. But most importantly, he was safe. Legally and completely hers. The custody battle had lasted exactly 48 hours. After Melissa presented Logan's recorded conversation to the family court judge, what followed wasn't a trial. It was a complete surrender. Faced with indisputable evidence of fraud, manipulation, and conspiracy, Logan's lawyer had advised an immediate settlement. Logan would receive supervised visitation rights and be responsible for substantial child support. But Emily retained full custody and decision-making authority. The criminal charges were still pending. Logan's business empire, built partly on fraudulent expense reports and embezzled funds used to support his relationship with Riley, was now crumbling under federal investigation. His once pristine reputation in Charlotte's automotive world was shattered beyond repair. "He looks like you when you concentrate," Cole said softly from the nursery doorway. He'd been respectfully distant during Emily's final weeks of pregnancy and Leo's birth, understanding she needed space to bond with her son and process everything that had happened. "People keep saying he looks like Logan," Emily replied, settling into the same rocking chair that had once belonged to her grandmother. "But I think he looks like himself." Cole approached slowly, as he always did around the baby, respectful of boundaries, careful not to presume. "May I?" Emily smiled and nodded. Watching Cole hold her son with such gentle confidence did something to her heart she wasn't quite ready to name yet, but couldn't ignore either. "Any word from Riley?" Cole asked, settling into the chair beside her. "She's in California with her sister. The baby's due in April." Emily had kept in touch with Riley, an unlikely friendship born from shared trauma and mutual protection. She's starting fresh, using her real name for the first time in years. "Her real name?" Cole asked. Riley Vaughn was her stage name from when she tried acting. Her real name is Rebecca, and she's actually 26, not 28. Logan made her change everything to fit his fantasy of who she should be. Cole shook his head in disgust. "The man really is a piece of work." "Was," Emily corrected softly, her gaze on her son. "He's not my problem anymore." Through the window, Emily could see her small garden where she'd been growing herbs and vegetables, a project that began as a form of therapy and had since become a genuine source of joy. Her consulting business was thriving, with a waiting list of clients and 3 associate consultants working under her guidance. The woman who once balanced Logan's books in exchange for empty promises had become a successful entrepreneur in her own right. "Emily," Cole said carefully, "I need to tell you something." She looked at him, noticing the seriousness in his expression. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, but Logan contacted me yesterday." Emily felt her body tense involuntarily. "What did he want?" "To offer me a deal. Apparently he's liquidating his remaining assets and wants to sell me his customer database and 2 of his lots." Cole's smile was sharp, satisfied. I told him I wasn't interested in buying anything from a man who threatens women and children, but I did make him a counteroffer. Which was? I offered to buy his customers at fair market value, on one condition, that he publicly apologized to you for his conduct and acknowledged that you were the driving force behind his early success. Emily stared at him. You didn't. I did. And Emily, he agreed. The apology will run in tomorrow's Charlotte Business Journal. Tears pricked Emily's eyes, not from sadness, but from something closer to vindication. After months of Logan trying to erase her contributions, minimize her worth, and destroy her reputation, he would now be forced to publicly acknowledge what she'd always known, that she'd been his equal partner, not his subordinate. Why would you do that? She asked. Because the truth matters. Because your son deserves to know that his mother built something meaningful. And because Logan Whitmore needed to learn that actions have consequences. Leo stirred in Cole's arms, making the soft snuffling sounds that meant he was waking up. Cole handed him back to Emily with the gentle confidence he brought to everything, never making her feel like he was trying to replace anyone or claim a role that wasn't his. There's something else, Cole said, as Emily settled Leo at her breast for his afternoon feeding. A question I've been wanting to ask. What kind of question? The kind that might change things between us. Emily's heart skipped, but her voice remained steady. I'm listening. I've been thinking about what I want my life to look like going forward. What kind of partner I want. What kind of future I want to build. Cole's green eyes were serious, intent. Emily, you're the strongest woman I've ever met. You're brilliant, compassionate, and you've built something beautiful out of the worst kind of betrayal. Let me finish, Cole said gently. I know you're not ready for anything romantic. I know you need time to heal, to establish your independence, to figure out who you are outside of being Logan's wife. But when you are ready, if you're ever ready, I want you to know that I'm here. Emily looked at this man who'd supported her without suffocating her, who'd offered friendship without agenda, who'd helped her fight for her son without expecting anything in return. The future she'd been afraid to imagine suddenly felt possible. I'm not ready, she said honestly. But Cole, when I am ready, I hope it's you I'm ready for. His smile was worth the wait. I'm a patient man, Emily. I've got time. Later that evening, as Emily sat in Grandma Rose's kitchen, reviewing client files while Leo slept peacefully in his bassinet, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, she'd been a woman who'd lost herself in someone else's ambitions, who'd accepted crumbs of affection and called it love. Now she was a mother, a business owner, a woman who had fought for her future and won. She had true friends, meaningful work, and the quiet confidence that came from knowing she could handle whatever life threw at her. Her phone buzzed with a text from a new client. Thank you for showing me that starting over isn't about going backward. It's about going forward with intention. Emily smiled as she typed back a response. Starting over with intention. That was exactly what she'd done, and it had made all the difference. Outside, the mountains stood silent and strong under a blanket of stars. Emily had found her peace among them, had rebuilt her life in their shadow, had learned that sometimes the most beautiful views required the hardest climbs. She looked down at her sleeping son, at the life she'd created through sheer determination and grace, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Complete satisfaction with who she was and what she'd built. Emily Carrington, no longer defined by her marriage, no longer diminished by someone else's limitations, was exactly where she belonged. 2 years later, the morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Emily's expanded home office, where she was reviewing the quarterly reports for Carrington Financial Consulting. What had started as a desperate attempt at independence had grown into a thriving firm with 12 employees and offices in both Asheville and Charlotte. Her specialty in financial planning for women in transition had earned her recognition as one of North Carolina's rising entrepreneurs. Mama up! Leo's voice carried from the living room, followed by the sound of his toy truck crashing into something. Emily smiled as she saved her work. At 2.5, Leo was a force of nature, curious, energetic, and blessed with an infectious laugh that could brighten the darkest days. He had Logan's coloring, but Emily's stubborn determination, and she couldn't imagine loving anyone more. "Come, sweetheart," she called, but before she could stand, Cole appeared in her office doorway with Leo perched on his shoulders. Someone was demanding his mama, Cole said with a grin, and threatening to demolish the living room if his demands weren't met. "He gets that from his father," Emily said with mock seriousness, then caught herself. It was still strange sometimes, having a relationship where she could make jokes without walking on eggshells. "Actually," Cole said, lowering Leo to the ground, where he immediately began rearranging Emily's desk supplies, "I think he gets it from his mother. The woman who single-handedly took down a corrupt businessman and built an empire from nothing." "Hardly an empire," Emily protested, but she was smiling. "Tell that to the Women's Business Association when they give you that award next month." Emily and Cole had been officially together for 8 months now, though their relationship had been building slowly for much longer. True to his word, Cole had waited patiently while Emily found her footing as a single mother and business owner. When she'd finally been ready to open her heart again, the transition from friendship to love had felt as natural as breathing. "Any word from Rebecca?" Cole asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. "She sent pictures yesterday. Little Emma is crawling everywhere and getting into everything." Emily pulled up the photos on her phone. A chubby, happy baby with Rebecca's bright eyes and mischievous smile. "She's thinking about moving back to North Carolina next year, starting fresh here instead of California." The friendship between Emily and Rebecca had surprised everyone, including themselves. But shared trauma had created an understanding that transcended their complicated history. Rebecca was raising her daughter alone, having never told Logan about the pregnancy, and Emily's support network had become Rebecca's lifeline. And Logan? Cole's voice was carefully neutral. He still struggled with anger toward Emily's ex-husband, though Logan was barely a presence in their lives anymore. Same as always, minimum effort, maximum drama. Emily's voice held no bitterness anymore, just tired acceptance. He sees Leo every other weekend when it's convenient for him, sends child support when his lawyer reminds him, and spends most of their visits trying to teach a 2-year-old about business success. Logan's fall from grace had been spectacular and complete. The criminal charges had resulted in a plea deal that included substantial fines and community service, but no jail time. His business empire was gone, sold off to pay legal fees and restitution. He now worked as a regional sales manager for someone else's company, a position that would have horrified the man Emily had once married, but seemed to suit the man he'd actually been all along. "Daddy," Leo suddenly announced, running toward the window where he'd spotted a car in the driveway. Emily's heart skipped, as it always did when Logan came for his visits. Not from fear anymore, but from that deeply ingrained protective instinct that never quite disappeared. Cole stood smoothly, understanding without words that Emily needed him nearby, but not hovering. Logan looked older when he walked up the front steps, grayer, thinner, with the slightly defeated air of a man who had lost everything he thought mattered. He was punctual these days, polite, and generally careful not to create drama during his limited time with Leo. The custody arrangement was working, though Emily sometimes wondered if Logan viewed his son more as an obligation than a joy. "Hello, Emily," Logan said as she opened the door. His eyes flicked to Cole, who was playing with Leo in the background, and something complicated passed across his face. Not quite jealousy anymore, but recognition of what he'd lost. "Logan, Leo's ready to go. I packed snacks and an extra change of clothes." "Thanks." Logan knelt down as Leo ran over, his smile becoming genuine for the first time since arriving. "Hey buddy, ready for an adventure?" Whatever else Logan had failed at, he did love his son, in his own limited way. Emily had learned to be grateful for that, as much as she could be. "We'll have him back by 6, Logan said, straightening with Leo in his arms. "Perfect. Have fun, sweetheart," Emily called to Leo, who waved enthusiastically as they headed toward the car. As the car pulled away, Cole wrapped his arms around Emily from behind, a gesture of comfort and support that never failed to steady her. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "More than okay?" And it was true. Watching Logan leave with Leo no longer felt like sending her child into uncertainty. It felt like giving a little boy time with his father, while trusting completely in her own ability to protect what mattered most. "Good," Cole said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, "because I have something I want to show you." He led her to the back porch, where he'd set up a small table with coffee and what looked like architectural plans. "What's this?" Emily asked, settling into her chair. "Plans for the house addition we talked about. Office space for your expanding business, a proper playroom for Leo." Cole's voice grew softer, more tentative. "And a master suite for us, if you're ready for that." Emily studied the drawings with growing excitement. The addition would transform Grandma June's modest house into something that could accommodate their growing life together. Professional success, family chaos, and quiet moments like this one. "Cole," she said finally, "it's perfect. We're ready." His smile was radiant, transformative. "I was hoping you'd say that." As they sat planning their future together, Emily reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 2.5 years ago, she'd been a woman who measured her worth by someone else's satisfaction, who had accepted scraps and called them love. Now she was building something new, something whole, something hers. Now she was building something remarkable. A business that mattered, a family that supported one another, and a love that enhanced, rather than diminished, who she was. Her phone buzzed with a message from a potential client. "I heard you help women who are starting over. I think I need your help." Emily smiled as she typed back. "Starting over isn't about forgetting your past. It's about refusing to let your past define your future. Let's talk." She looked out at the mountains that had quietly sheltered her transformation, at the life she had built with courage and purpose, at the man beside her who saw her completely and loved her without condition. Some stories, Emily thought, were worth waiting for. Some victories were worth fighting for, and some loves were worth believing in again. The future stretched ahead, bright with possibility and built on the solid foundation of knowing exactly who she was and what she deserved. Emily Carson had finally come home to herself. So the story is over. Our wonderful friends, are you still here with me at this hour? If you're truly still listening, then something in this journey must be touching your heart, maybe even reflecting a bit of your own. And that's what makes stories like these powerful. They aren't just fiction. They are mirrors. They show us the versions of ourselves we hide, deny, or sometimes forget we have the strength to become. Emily's story isn't just about betrayal. It's about reclaiming self-worth. It's a reminder that love, when unreciprocated or misused, becomes a prison, not a partnership. She gave everything, her time, her career, her dreams, not because she was weak, but because she believed in a future they were supposed to build together. And when that future crumbled, she didn't collapse. She stood up. There's something beautiful in that kind of stillness. The moment someone realizes their pain has a limit, but their strength does not. As author Glennon Doyle once said, "You can do hard things." Emily did, and maybe you can too. Maybe you felt overlooked, undervalued, or pushed to the side while someone else's dreams took the front seat. Maybe you've been told you were too complicated when all you were doing was loving deeply and planning wisely. If that's you, remember, your depth is not your weakness, it's your power. Let this story be more than entertainment. Let it be fuel. A quiet nudge to check in with your own boundaries, your own dreams, and your own voice. So if something in Emily's journey made your chest ache or your eyes water, don't leave quietly. Like this video, share it with someone who needs strength today, and subscribe so we can keep bringing stories that speak not just to the mind, but to the heart. We're in this together, and your story matters too.